There are a ton of possibilities and a ton of things that Marvel and Sony could have done with the Venom franchise. In this video, we are going to look at the potential impact that the Amazing Spider-Man could have had on the Venom franchise if he was added into it. So as I think most of you know, the entire production of Venom was covered in reports that a Spider-Man would appear in every film. From Venom 1 to the second one to, of course, the third one. And this jumped around between what Spider-Man would appear. Originally, everybody was convinced it would have been Tom Holland. And then that was kind of confirmed in the second film, although that was a multiverse thing leading into Spider-Man No Way Home. And ultimately, we ended up getting no Spider-Man in the Venom franchise. Now, for this entry in What If and The Crisis, we are looking at the bigger picture here related to what if they decided to establish that the Amazing Spider-Man did take place in the Venom franchise, and that Andrew Garfield was a part of that universe. So for all intents and purposes, we're going to go to Venom 1. So the first Venom film plays out pretty much one-to-one, almost exactly the same. I mean, like, almost exactly. Like, we're talking 95% the same. But during the course of the film, where Eddie Brock is talking about living in New York and what happened, he reveals that his life took a really bad turn when he got working at the Daily Bugle, and this one reporter, who he mentions as Peter Parker, stood in his way. He got the scoops before him, and while he was working on a Spider-Man case, everything went south. He says he tried to expose Spider-Man for what he did, but Spider-Man made a fool of him. He lost everything, and the only thing he could possibly do was leave New York. He establishes he's still upset with Peter. He wants revenge. Now, Venom in this first film is still largely a hero as he's fighting for himself and to try to save himself, but being attached to Eddie fundamentally changes him, and Eddie's a lot angrier due to the Peter Parker connection, right? At the end of the film, this is where, like, the 5% change happens. Eddie, after defeating Riot, flies back to New York. The last thing we see is him going to the Daily Bugle, entering, and asking for Peter Parker. Jameson tells him he's not here. He asks if he knows where he is. Jameson tells him he hasn't seen him in a bit. He's not really sure what's going on with Peter. Something happened. So we establish that Venom takes place about 3 to 4 years after the events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. After losing Gwen and that ending, Spider-Man abandoned being Spider-Man for about 1.5 to 2 years. He let the city kind of go to crap. He then came back, and as he mentions in No Way Home, and this is important because it's coming out after the first Venom film is out, he revealed he stopped pulling punches. That's why nobody's seen him. That's why he hasn't been active. He's kind of just kept to himself. He almost ended up completely killing one of his villains. Now, fully knowing this and this being established to us, because, hey, you know, he didn't hold back. That's what he says in No Way Home. After he's back in that film, we enter Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage. This time, for all intents and purposes, let's say the film remains mostly the same, just set in New York. That's an important factor here. But this time, we got to deal with Spider-Man as well. He's not going to be in the picture the entire time, but he will, as this film is sort of marketed in a different way. They market it on the Carnage factor and Spider-Man being in it. We just don't know to what degree. We then get to the point where, oh wait, Venom 2 is actually Venom versus Spider-Man. Carnage is just kind of a stopgap, right? It's almost like a triple threat match. None of these factions like each other. Neither of the three like each other, right? Spider-Man Peter is forced to put the mask back on and get back to it because of a symbiote outbreak in New York. He feels like he needs to do it. And after seeing the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, he now feels like he can be the hero that the universe and the world deserves. And he's going to put a stop to both of these symbiotes. So yeah, it's a drag-out fight. Carnage versus Venom versus Spider-Man. Ultimately, the Venom symbiote, once Carnage is defeated, Cletus Cassidy's locked up, and, they clean up the remains, the symbiote piece, a symbiote piece from Venom, jumps onto Spider-Man and starts to build up that relationship. At the end of Venom 2, the symbiote completely leaves Eddie and goes to Spider-Man. The post-credit scene would have just seen Peter with the black suit waking up, not knowing where he's at. That iconic scene, right? That's how we end it. In this timeline, there is no Venom 3. There's The Amazing Spider-Man versus Venom. That's your hopeful big billion-dollar ticket. Venom 1 did the same box office numbers. 2 did better than what the second one did because of the Spider-Man factor. 3, they're hoping for $1 billion. This film would essentially be the drag-out fight that people want, to right the wrong that they did with Spider-Man 3. Now, I know this is kind of cheating because it's what if they added Andrew Garfield to the Venom franchise, but you got to understand that if they're adding him, the franchise would swing back around, right? Haha, pun intended, and it would all sort of converge. So in the third film, I think you would have seen Spider-Man after the events of No Way Home again versus Venom after he already visited over there, because that still played out and the symbiote got a taste of what it's like and now it wants even more Spider-Man. So you kind of get a drag-out brawl, right? The Venom symbiote knows of the multiverse. You kind of know what's going on. The only other thing I would bring into this is that by the end of the third film, for both of them, this is where No still plays a factor. So ultimately, however the film plays out, it ends with No escaping the void. And he's not just threatening, to go after them. He wants, again, the entire multiverse. And ultimately, the Venom symbiote becomes the lethal protector, like it always wanted to be, by the influence of Spider-Man, realizing that they both don't want to destroy the universe because the symbiote learned something from Peter, and so did Eddie. And petty revenge and vengeance was never the answer. So then you could continue and make a Spider-Man 4. You can make a Venom 4. You can make a giant crossover that features more characters versus No, but you're kind of left with a franchise that doesn't beat around the bush to trying to confirm Spider-Man exists or doesn't, and he's here or he's there. You kind of just give people what they want, I think, ultimately, and that kind of, I think, would have worked. So there you go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my take on what if Sony did decide to add Andrew from the very start, or somewhat start, I guess. Thank you for checking out that video, and thank you for your continued support. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, do whatever you will, and if you're so inclined and would like some additional content from us, which includes unfiltered content and bonus discussions, we do offer exclusively in our member section. We hope to see you there. So thank you for watching, and have a good one.